And good to have you with us here on Mirror Now. This is a special broadcast bringing to you on the historic day. Officially now, the process of constructing a Ram Mandir, a Ram temple in Ayodhya can begin. Today was the grand Bhumi Pujan, the foundation laying ceremony where Prime Minister Modi himself laid the first foundation stone. Decades of a controversy, of a battle, decades of politics, a massive nationwide movement called the Ayodhya movement, a high-profile legal battle going all the way up to the Supreme Court. All of that has now culminated to this one point, where in Ayodhya, at the Ram Janmabhoomi, a temple for Lord Ram will be built. And of course, this is the big focus this evening. I'm going to get you all the details of what's happened through the day. First up, let's go across to Mandar Fanse, who's joining us live from Ayodhya. Mandar, it's been a historic day for every single person there in Ayodhya, every single resident. You know, what's the sentiment this evening, now that the Bhumi Pujan is officially done?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, every citizen across in Ayodhya, I'll just show you, I'm right now on the top of the Hanuman Gadi temple, and this is the place which is the highest place in Ayodhya. You can see the whole Ayodhya city is now getting beautifully lit up as the evening is progressing. As every street and every smaller street within the city itself is being decorated, lighted, and all the diyas have been lighted over there. This is the place where Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived first, because anybody who comes in Ayodhya who has to come in the darbar of Lord Hanuman, and this is the place where Prime Minister Narendra Modi has come and did his own pujas, and puja vidhis were done by Narendra Modi over here, our Prime Minister. And this is the place right now at Hanuman Gadi, where people have thronged after evening. They have come here for the darshan of Lord Hanumana, and you can see the lights and diyas are being offered to Lord Hanumana here. So of course, this is the mood of the Ayodhya. It's a jubilant mood, and not just that, it is a complete hope is gleaming in everyone's face, because everybody here in Ayodhya is thinking that post this Ram Mandir, commencement of the Ram Mandir temple construction, the face of the Ayodhya would change. The glory of Ayodhya, which was lost for so many years, for so many centuries, the glory would come back, and every person, every citizen from Ayodhya would get what they deserve. They are saying that they need hospitals, they need various modern facilities over here. And in that context, every citizen over here in Ayodhya is really happy. They see some future ahead, and with that context, the citizens are really pleased, Tanvi.
Okay, in fact, we're also getting visuals of special arati and, puja that's being held. A very regular daily affair any which ways in cities like Ayodhya and Varanasi along the ghats. But of course, today it holds special value, being the fact that it's finally, as Prime Minister Modi said, the start of a golden chapter. And the Bhumi Pujan is now done. Of course, what you're looking at on your screens is the RSS chief wearing a mask, so it's very difficult to spot, who it is that you're seeing on the screen suddenly. But that's the RSS chief, Mohan Bhagwat, who's participating in this aarti that's taking place along the ghats right now. Mandar, all the focus was, of course, on what the Prime Minister was doing, but also the presence of various organizations and religious leaders and top seers from, Ramdev, the Yoga Guru Ramdev, to even the RSS chief who were present. What's the chatter like on ground amongst the locals? Are they happy to see? Did they miss certain other leaders who were connected to the movement itself in the 90s? Are they glad that this time has finally come?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Tanvi, a while ago, from now, we just had a word with some seers over here who were standing right there below the Hanuman Gadi, and they were all talking about the glory of Indian culture and especially the virtues which Lord Rama has taught to all of us in India, and therefore they are really beaming with hope. And at the same time, some hardliners, some right-wing organizations, they have already started talking about the other places in India, and that is where it is really creating some questions in the mind as well, because of course post Ram Mandir movement, it's possibly a chance that most of the right-wing organizations like Vishwa Hindu Parishad, or for that matter Bajrang Dal, and likewise right-wing organizations would start harping on other agendas which they were already talking about in the rest of India. So this is the chatter which is already started by those hardliner right-wing organizations within Ayodhya itself, and otherwise in the rest of India. But apart from that, the very important factor which every person in akhadas, we visited in some akhadas where the seers of the akhadas were talking that this was the most historic moment for them, and they have spent the whole lives for this particular movement, and they have done everything possible in last 40 years, 30 years around, and therefore they were really glad to see this day, and they were literally happy to see this particular day when the stone laying ceremony has happened. The Bhumi Pujan they witnessed since last 3 days, and we are just almost a few meters away from the Ram Janmabhoomi. This place, Hanuman Gadi, is considered as the main place in Ayodhya, since Lord Hanumana is also one of the most important deities here, and therefore the seers from here, the chief of Hanuman Gadi, they are all really happy, and they see some kind of activities in the nearest future from the state government as well as the central government, because they are all hoping that there needs some boost to the tourism, the global tourism for Ayodhya, and spiritual tourism. Apart from that, the business in the city will also start rolling. That is what most of the small shop owners were telling us. So this is the situation as of now in Ayodhya. Much of hope around, and people are really happy.
All right, Mandar, is at the temple that was first visited by Prime Minister Modi, and that's usually the tradition that everybody follows, first to the Hanuman Mandir and then of course to Ram Janmabhoomi, which is what Prime Minister Modi did today. Mandar Fancy, thanks so much for joining us, and in fact staying live with us through the day, getting us non-stop updates there from the temple city. Now, in case you missed some of the action earlier in the day, which is the first few hours, roughly from about 8-9 a.m. till about 1 p.m. is when the entire process and the series of activities took place. And so let me just take you through all of that. Now, the excitement, of course, was palpable, not just from this morning, early in the morning, but for the last couple of days, we've actually been seeing that the Saryu River Ghat was all decked up for the event. In fact, security forces kept a close vigil to ensure that the event took place without any hiccups. So there was a huge amount of security. Chief Minister Yogi himself arrived much before time to do, last-minute review checks of the venue, the arrangements, and of course the venue itself was repeatedly sanitized. Now, the event also saw, so these are the visuals that you're seeing on your screens of the sanitization. This was just an hour or so before the dignitaries began to arrive, and this is at the Hanuman Gadi temple, which is where Mandar was standing right now. Of course, as we were getting these visuals of sanitization, we also saw some of the top seers in attendance, all gathering at the Ram Janmabhoomi, which is where the Bhumi Pujan took place. Yoga Guru Ramdev, Swami Avdeshanand Giri, Swami Chidananda Saraswati, Chidananda Maharaj, they were all, invited and all present. Their religious leaders, even from few of the other faiths, were seen here. Let's listen into some of the comments.
अब भारत में राम मंदिर के निर्माण के साथ एक नया सांस्कृतिक सृजन भी होगा और मुझे विश्वास है राम मंदिर के साथ साथ इस देश में एक राम राज्य की भी प्रतिष्ठा होगी। राम जैसा, सीता माता जैसा पवित्र चरित्र भी इस राष्ट्र का होगा और देश की शिक्षा व्यवस्था, चिकित्सा व्यवस्था, सामाजिक व्यवस्था में और ज्यादा न्यायपूर्णता होगी और ये देश सब प्रकार की खुशहाली के साथ अयोध्या सहित पूरा राष्ट्र समृद्धि के नए सोपान चढ़ेगा।
And then, of course, the moment that everybody was waiting for the activities to begin was, of course, the arrival of Prime Minister himself. So just before the Bhumi Puja, Prime Minister Modi arrived in the temple town in a helicopter. He flew down from Delhi in a plane to Lucknow and from there was brought in a helicopter. Prime Minister was dressed in a golden kurta and cream dhoti and an orange gamcha, was greeted on his arrival by Chief Minister Yogi and several senior officials as well as dignitaries. But before taking part in the Bhumi Pujan, Prime Minister Modi visited the Hanuman Gari temple in Ayodhya. He was accompanied by the Chief Minister for this visit and Prime Minister took his time, paying his tribute, offering his prayers to the deity there and, walking around this entire place, performing all the rituals that any believer would at a temple like this. Biggest display of his devotion, Prime Minister Modi also offered his prayers then at Ram Lalla, bowed down to the deity and offered his prayers, paid his respects. Those are the visuals of Prime Minister in front of the Lal Lalla, praying, paying his respects, bowing down. And of course, after that, he went on to even plant the Parijat tree to commemorate this entire ceremony and this puja. Then the Prime Minister moved on to the Ram Janmabhoomi for the historic Mandir Bhumi Pujan event. Prime Minister took part in the ceremony while wearing a mask and maintaining social distance. There were only 5 dignitaries present on the stage with him. Rest everybody maintaining social distances was sitting behind watching this entire puja.
tum tungaro pangaganapathigatam vyapnubam sandigantan kling 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 karana thangalitamamadamilalolamattalimalam hrim hrim hrinkara-pingam sakalamurivaradhyeyamurdanta sundam Srim Srim Shrim Shrim Sayam Tam Sakalanidhikulam Naumi Heramba-bimbam Long Long Longkaramadhyam Pranavimiva Padam Mantra Muktavalena.
As you can see, he was joined on the stage by Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath, Governor Anandiben and RSS Chief Mohan Bhagwat. Now, I will play out excerpts of Prime Minister's speech in just a bit. But before that, let's say good evening to the panelists who are joining me this evening. Also, for a conversation on what we witnessed today and what it really means. So, good evening to Vinay Tiwari, our managing editor, with me in the studios. Good evening to Mr. Javed Ansari, senior journalist, and also a big welcome to Mr. Sudhir Mishra, resident editor of Navbharat Times, with me this evening. Vinay, let's begin with you. I mean, it was definitely not just a big moment for the believers and for those who've been hoping and rallying for a Ram temple, but for everybody in the country, a spectacle to just see your own Prime Minister show this kind of a devotion, bow down in front of the Lord he believes in, and be like any other citizen and a believer was very interesting.
Yes, that's definitely one view, possibly the majority view as well, but we've heard people having a slightly different view as well. There are those who actually believe that the Prime Minister of a country shouldn't really be associating himself so openly with a very overt display of religion. But look, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone should have been surprised that the Prime Minister did so. BJP, of all the parties, is possibly one of those parties which has never shied away from making it very overt and making it very obvious and making it very transparent where they stand. Frankly, there was nothing else possible but this, what we saw today, that the Prime Minister would go and would very openly and without at all minding any kind of criticism, no matter from which quarter, and going ahead and putting his stamp on it, so to speak. Because the first brick of this temple, which has been in the, in dispute for decades now in modern India and before that as well, has been laid by him. And so in that sense, he will go down in history in that sense. And remember, Ayodhya's Ram Mandir will now go down as modern India's new architectural building, something that will go down in history. I mean, today when any heritage building or any building that you speak of, were all pre-independence era. I mean, most of the buildings that even the Red Fort where the Prime Minister is about to give a speech on 15th of August is not our building. It was built by the Mughals, so to speak, right? Yes. So this is going to be the post-modern construction that will be done by a sitting government. And in that sense, that's a legacy that you cannot take away. And I don't see how it would not have happened. So yes, those images have been there. There have been those who've raised questions over it. But with the BJP, the one thing you can be sure of is that they say they'll be sure about where they stand and they'll make it very transparent and open. I don't think they've ever hidden the fact where they stand on this whole issue.
In many ways, one can say it's their unabashed
They're very
belief
unabashed, absolutely.
and Ram Bhakti and right from the party president to, of course, the Prime Minister as well. Mr. Ansari, what's your view? Was there a need for this controversy? He is the Prime Minister of our country, but many, sitting ministers and Prime Ministers have attended religious events in the past. Should this have been any different?
Should this have been any different? I don't know, but I don't know of another Prime Minister who went for a Bhumi Pujan or the foundation stone of a mosque or a church or a gurdwara or a temple for that matter. But that being said, I'm not surprised. I'm surprised at people who are surprised that Prime Minister Narendra Modi went for the foundation laying stone ceremony. The BJP and especially Prime Minister Modi have worn their religious linkages and loyalties on their sleeve. The Prime Minister, a lot of people cite the example of Pandit Nehru who declined from attending a similar ceremony when the Somnath temple was being built, citing the fact that the Prime Minister of a secular country should not directly be associating with the religion. But Mr. Modi has long removed that distinction. He's not one for holding back. He wears his religiosity on his sleeve. And like when I was saying, I'm not surprised at all. I would have been very surprised if he hadn't gone there, because for Mr. Modi, the world is a stage. And if the world is a stage, Mr. Modi is there to perform.
All right, that's an interesting comment that you made.
Yes, and let me add that I say this with no disrespect.
Yes.
Mr. Modi is a politician, and he leaves no stone, no opportunity where if he can milk that opportunity, he will do it.
Yes, well, let's say that he knows the importance of visual messaging. He knows the way it has to be communicated and how powerful these imageries can be. I mean, for a really long time, I'm sure people are going to remember what was visible on all TV channels today and is being splashed across digital media. A Ram Bhakt, unabashed about his belief, irrespective of what anybody else has to say. Mr. Sudhir Mishra, this is the Prime Minister who's also a believer, and that's how it is. Do you believe that at least the occasion was used rightly to send across that message?
आप थोड़ा सा पहले जाइए, जब पहली बार प्रधानमंत्री बनकर लोकसभा में गए थे प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी, तो तब भी उन्होंने ऐसे ही
मुझे इसी दृष्टि से वही दृश्य याद आया।
हाँ, तो ये पहले भी उन्होंने ऐसा किया था, और ये एक स्पष्ट मैसेजिंग है, ये संदेश है उनका, अपने जिन लोगों ने उन्हें चुन के भेजा है, वो उनकी भावनाओं को भी रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं। और आज वहां पर वो एक प्रधानमंत्री के तौर पे कम थे और एक भक्त के तौर पे ज्यादा थे, और वो उन लाखों भक्तों को रिप्रेजेंट कर रहे थे जो इस कोरोना आपदा की वजह से वहां पे मौजूद नहीं है, लेकिन वो लोगों के जन जन की भावना है, वो अपने लोगों की भावनाओं को समझ रहे थे और उसको वहां पे रिप्रेजेंट कर रहे थे कि एक आम भक्त भगवान राम के प्रति किस श्रद्धा के साथ में दंडवत होता। शायद ये ऐसा करके उन्होंने अपने उन सारे लोगों को मैसेज देना था, उनको संदेश देना था कि मैं हूं, मैं आपको रिप्रेजेंट कर रहा हूं, और वो उसमें कामयाब भी रहे। और ये उनकी राजनीति भी है और ये उनकी श्रद्धा और आस्था भी है, और वो इसी आस्था को और इसी विचार के लोगों को रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं। वो प्रधानमंत्री पूरे देश के हैं, लेकिन वो एक विचारधारा को भी रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं, और आज शायद उस विचारधारा के लिए वो वहां पे ज्यादा थे। तो प्रधानमंत्री का प्रोटोकॉल पीछे था, एक भक्त का जो प्रोटोकॉल होता है वो आगे था।
जी, आपने ये बिल्कुल सही कहा, और ये भी बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग था विनय कि उनके साथ स्टेज पे, और मेनी वुड से जस्टिफाइबली सो, अदर्स में क्वेश्चन द चॉइस, बट उनके साथ उस मंच पे जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल पोस्ट या सिटिंग मिनिस्टर और गवर्नर है वो तो थे ही, और साथ में थे आरएसएस चीफ।
Again, I'm not surprised because look, like it or not, although Mr. Modi has had a, I would say, evolving relationship with the RSS. It started off very differently when he first became the Chief Minister of Gujarat, but then it evolved over a period of time. And I think over the period of the last couple of decades or so, the RSS also realized the importance and the virtue of Mr. Modi, and how his persona or his brand of politics fitted in very neatly with the vision that the RSS had of India. So there has been a bit of a kind of a collation of the two minds together. And since then, and since the time that he's announced himself as the Prime Minister candidate, the party announced him as the Prime Minister candidate, and he became the Prime Minister in 2014, you can see that there has been an RSS imprint on a lot of things that the government has done. I remember in 2014, if I remember correctly, one of the first things that happened after he won the election was he also drove down to the RSS headquarters in Jhandewala in Delhi. That is not something that had happened before. So he's never really, made any bones about that as well. Even the prominence that the RSS has got in the last 8-9 years has never happened before. The RSS Dashera rally that happens in Nagpur has acquired a profile of its own in the last few years. So it's not surprising that Mr. Bhagwat was there. It's not even surprising that the RSS chief was given the kind of position, because in many ways, the ideological guru of the BJP is the RSS, and they have not hidden that aspect either. I mean, both sides have actually kind of said so very openly, and both have had a very close symbiotic relationship now in the last several years or so.
Well, so Mr. Mishra, if I can actually ask you a bit more about what happens next. This was the Bhumi Pujan. We're given to understand that the construction itself will take 3.5 years. What's the sentiment, in Uttar Pradesh, and the conversations that are going on? How is this entire construction period being viewed? Sudhir Mishra ji, that question to you. In UP, what is the conversation about? How is this entire construction, a 3.5 year period, really being viewed by the people?
सवाल किससे है ये?
जी, आपसे.
हेलो.
सुधीर मिश्रा जी, आप ही से है सवाल. Okay, we're just going to check that and get back to Mr. Sudhir Mishra. I'm not too sure if he's...
मुझे आ रही आवाज, बीच में आपकी आवाज चली गई थी.
जी, मेरा सवाल आपसे ये है कि अब जो ये भूमि पूजन तो हो गया, अब यहाँ से आगे कहानी कैसे बढ़ेगी, उसके बारे में क्या बातचीत हो रही है उत्तर प्रदेश में, कैसे इस पूरे इवेंट को देखा जा रहा है?
देखिए, अभी इस इवेंट को इवेंट के दो तीन हिस्से हैं. इस इवेंट के बहाने, इस राम मंदिर के बहाने, एक तो उत्तर प्रदेश के विकास की बात है, उत्तर प्रदेश के डेवलपमेंट की बात है, खासतौर से पूर्वी उत्तर प्रदेश की बात है, जो मुख्यमंत्री का जो संसदीय क्षेत्र है, विधानसभा क्षेत्र है गोरखपुर, वहां से उस इलाके की पूरी बात है कि इससे पूर्वी उत्तर प्रदेश का एक विकास का खाका बनता हुआ नजर आ रहा है. सबसे बड़ी बात तो यही है कि वहां पर बनारस है और कुशीनगर का बौद्ध सर्किट है और ये राम मंदिर अब एक बहुत बड़ा पर्यटन स्थल के तौर पर डेवलप होगा. और जब इतना बड़ा भव्य मंदिर बनेगा तो पूरे देश विदेश के काफी निवेशक भी वहां पर अपनी रुचि दिखा रहे हैं. एक बात तो ये है. दूसरा ये कि लोग इसके बारे में कह रहे हैं कि ये राजनीति का मुद्दा अब खत्म हो गया. मुझे लगता है कि आज अगर आप प्रधानमंत्री के भाषण को आपने ध्यान से सुना हो और आरएसएस प्रमुख की सुना हो, तो उन्होंने भगवान राम के बहाने बार बार समरसता की बात की है। बार बार उन्होंने वनवासियों की बात की, बात बात शबरी की बात आई, तमिलनाडु की बात आई, महाराष्ट्र के क्षत्रपों की बात आई, विभिन्न जातियों के क्षत्रपों की बात आई। तो कहीं ना कहीं वो ये एक इसके पीछे एक राजनीतिक सोच भी है कि इस बहाने से हम भगवान राम के बहाने से जो अब तक मंडल और कमंडल की जो लड़ाई होती है और हमेशा एक बैलेंस बना रहता है, खासतौर से मंडल को लेकर, आरक्षण को लेकर और तमाम जो जातीय राजनीति है उसकी काट को लेकर, पूरा इस आज के भाषण में मैंने देखा, इस बात को महसूस किया कि उसको आगे काउंटर करेगी। आज से जो रूपरेखा बन रही है, अभी तक तो ये एक धर्म की बात थी और एक संप्रदाय की बात थी, लेकिन मुझे लग रहा है ये आगे इसमें हिंदू समाज को एकजुट रखने का जो एक मैसेज है इसमें, वो एक बड़ी बात है इसमें। और मुझे लगता है कि अगले 3 साल में उत्तर प्रदेश के चुनावों से पहले इस चीज को बार बार दोहराया जाएगा और इस चीज को बार बार पुष्ट करने की कोशिश की जाएगी।
ये बहुत क्रिटिकल भी हो सकता है मिस्टर जावेद अंसारी, because of course for a while now Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath has said that Ram Rajya is equivalent to development and development for all, and that's what we are going to try. Now if at every step they fail, and of course development and getting rid of crime and all these things are not going to be easy in a state like Uttar Pradesh, this question will be put up to them कि आप राम राज्य की बात तो कर रहे हैं, लेकिन क्या मंदिर बना के भूल गए बाकी सब?
Well, certainly their mandate as Prime Minister and Chief Minister respectively is to take not just the Hindu Samaj together, but entire society, all their residents, all citizens of India and of Uttar Pradesh, and also to ensure that there is justice for all, and the fruits of development reach everybody in equal measure. In fact, they should reach the poor and the downtrodden much quicker and much before it reaches anybody else. So therefore, the onus is now on Mr. Modi as Prime Minister and Mr. Yogi Adityanath as the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh to deliver. The Ram Mandir fulfills one aspect, the religious aspect of what people may want. But you have to fill people's stomachs, you have to provide electricity, you have to provide proper healthcare, good schools, you have to provide all-round development for Uttar Pradesh. And I hope they will be mindful of the fact and not just get carried away by the adulation that they are receiving with regards to the foundation laying stone ceremony of the Ram Mandir.
Vinay, would you like to comment on this? That now that this part is done and you've delivered on this promise, the spotlight should ideally be a lot more on what you deliver on actual governance.
Of course, the spotlight should be on it for sure. And but look, I've always believed, and I've said so, I mean more so in the last couple of years or so, that the BJP has been smart enough to recalibrate and create a basket of issues and not just keep it a one issue election. I mean, they play the horses for courses policy. They alter their strategy depending on which state or which region they are campaigning in or they're raising issues. Their issues can vary from state to state. And they've also expanded the whole concept of not just so-called Hindutva or religion, but also other things as well. And I think there is that basket creates the plus factor, which if there is at least something to show on the ground, it benefits you. I mean, obviously, if you have nothing to show on ground, just religion alone may not give you repeated dividends. It may give you dividends once, but it will not come back as a repeat dividend for you if there is no additional basket. And I think they've been smart enough to add that. Sudhirji mentioned one specific point about the economy of Eastern UP. Till now, the tourism circuit in UP was largely Agra, especially the international tourists, even the domestic tourists, or they would go on the Banaras circuit, which was more about Banaras and then going on to the Buddha circuit in Bihar. And for some reason, Ayodhya was never really a part of that at all. But when you have a very large structure, especially a structure that has been written about globally and talked about, and of course today's event itself is now going to be talked about globally, it will really become part of that circuit in any case. There is a developmental process aimed precisely at that which is already in motion. There is a corridor that is being built already, and obviously that has a spin-off benefit for the city. I mean, I remember that when the Babri Masjid demolition had happened, and post that, and we were, I mean, our home was like 2 hours away from that place, and every time we would go there, the one thing that would strike us as very odd is how bad the condition of Ayodhya and Faizabad used to be. It was a really bad, backward district, and it never really improved, even though so much of limelight and so much of media attention and so much of, you know, presence of politicians there, but the city was in very bad shape. It was in shambles. And that, if you see today, when Mandar was reporting today, most of the people now say that the best thing that will happen is that it will give us the kind of city that we have always dreamt of. I don't know how many people know that Ayodhya never even had a railway station. It started building just about a couple of years ago when Mr. Yogi Adityanath became the Chief Minister. They've not had, the Faizabad was the nearest railway station. So obviously now, tomorrow, if there is a political dividend to be reaped, is it because of a religious factor, or is it because people also got some other developmental benefit at all, is a subject for discussion. But I believe that now in the modern era, there is also a plus factor that is required in the basket of religion that party might play as an election card, but that can't be the only card that you play.
सुधीर मिश्रा जी, would you want to comment on this? ये जो बात हो रही है डेवलपमेंट की, और ये जो पार्ट्स आपने पहले भी मेंशन किए, टूरिज्म का एक प्लान और रिलीजियस टूरिज्म इनफैक्ट का एक प्लान पिछली सरकार के समय भी बन रहा था, और अब इस सरकार ने ऑफ कोर्स उसको एक और ज़्यादा कॉन्क्रीट रूप दे के काम शुरू कर दिया. कहाँ तक उस प्लान का क्या अभी प्रोग्रेस रहा है और कितनी सीरियसली फॉलो अप किया जा रहा है?
3 साल पहले मैं वहां पे अयोध्या गया था और मैंने देखा था राम की पैड़ी और तमाम यहाँ की जो गलियां हैं और मंदिरों का हाल है वो अच्छा नहीं था. काफी गंदगी थी और राम की पैड़ी में भी पानी बहुत खराब स्थिति में था. दूसरा ये कि जो वहां पर अभी तक जो तीर्थ यात्री आते हैं वो ज्यादातर गांवों से आते हैं, कस्बों से आते हैं, और जो आस्थावान लोअर मिडिल क्लास लोग हैं वो ज्यादा लोग होते थे. लेकिन अब जिस तरह से मंदिर की भव्यता को प्रदर्शित किया जा रहा है, जिस तरह से ग्लोबल लेवल पर मंदिर के बारे में बातचीत हो रही है, तो अब निश्चित तौर पर यहाँ आने वाले भक्तों की श्रेणी भी बदलने वाली है, अब उनकी कैटेगरी भी बदलने वाली है. तो जाहिर सी बात है कि जब थोड़ा सा आर्थिक रूप से समृद्ध लोग यहाँ आना शुरू करेंगे तो उनकी जरूरतों के हिसाब से भी काम होना शुरू होगा. दूसरी बात मैं जो बार बार ये कह रहा हूं कि जो आगरा एक्सप्रेस वे बन चुका है और अब इधर से पूर्वांचल एक्सप्रेस वे बनने वाला है, ये सारे जो एक्सप्रेस वे बन रहे हैं और उसके साथ में कुशीनगर है और बिहार का हिस्सा जो बौद्ध सर्किट है और बनारस है और अयोध्या है और फिर लखनऊ है, कैपिटल है, और फिर आगरा, इस तरह से ये जुड़कर एक टूरिज्म पूरा एक वे बन जाएगा, पूरा एक सर्किल बन जाएगा, और जहां पे लोग बहुत तेजी से बाय रोड भी पहुंच सकते हैं. और एयरपोर्ट का भी प्लान हो गया है, इंटरनेशनल एयरपोर्ट अयोध्या में प्लान हो चुका है. और योगी आदित्यनाथ जी, मुख्यमंत्री योगी आदित्यनाथ बहुत ज्यादा खुद इसको लेकर बहुत ज्यादा दिलचस्पी रखते हैं, क्योंकि उनकी भी राजनीति, उनकी आगे भविष्य की राजनीति पूर्वांचल के डेवलपमेंट को लेकर काफी ज्यादा, पूरे उत्तर प्रदेश से तो खैर मुख्यमंत्री है ही है, लेकिन पूर्वांचल में उनसे बहुत लोगों को उम्मीद है. और राम मंदिर उसका एक जरिया हो सकता है कि राम मंदिर में जो इन्वेस्टमेंट आएगा, राम मंदिर में जो लोगों की दिलचस्पियां होंगी, वो उसके विकास की जो छाया है वो इधर लखनऊ तक आएगी, तो आगे गोरखपुर तक, बस्ती, गोंडा, बहराइच, जो कि बहुत ही मतलब जहां की बहुत ही बैकवर्ड जिनको हम डिस्ट्रिक्ट बोलेंगे, उनकी स्थिति पर भी इसका असर पड़ेगा.
जी, तो ये बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग रहेगा यहाँ से कैसे ये प्रोग्रेस होता है, बिकॉज अब ये प्रॉमिस तो पूरा हो गया, दे हैव डिलीवर्ड ऑन दिस, बट पीपल हैव आल्सो इलेक्टेड देम for development and progress, and that's the part that they will have to deliver on as well. I'm going to thank both of our expert panelists for joining us, and also thank you to you, Vinay, for speaking with us. Let me quickly play out excerpts of Prime Minister's speech. After the Bhumi Pujan, he also addressed that entire ceremony there, and of course the entire country was also watching. Here's an excerpt of that speech.
पूरा देश रोमांचित है, हर मन दीपमय है. आज पूरा भारत भावुक है. सदियों का इंतजार आज समाप्त हो रहा है. बरसों से टाट और टेंट के नीचे रहे हमारे रामलला के लिए अब एक भव्य मंदिर का निर्माण होगा। टूटना और फिर उठ खड़ा होना, सदियों से चल रहे इस व्यतिक्रम से राम जन्मभूमि आज मुक्त हुई है। आप भगवान राम की अद्भुत शक्ति देखिए। इमारतें नष्ट हो गई, क्या कुछ नहीं हुआ? अस्तित्व मिटाने का हर कोई प्रयास हुआ, बहुत हुआ, लेकिन राम आज भी हमारे मन में बसे हैं, हमारी संस्कृति के आधार है। श्री राम भारत की मर्यादा है। श्री राम मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम है।